Hi everyone, it's Niamh here and welcome to my art journaling channel. Today we're going to be doing a page in my art journal using the new Distress Embossing Glazes. So I'm starting out with making my background, and I'm actually doing on cardboard to stick into my journal, which isn't something I usually do, but for this technique I wanted something that was a little bit more chunky and a little bit more textured. So I'm just starting off with an old nappy box. I'm pulling off a little bit of the bits and pieces to expose some of the corrugation, and I found the easiest way to do that is to use a skewer to push it in and sort of just peel off bits and pieces here and there. So you want it to look sort of tattered, peeled away in places. To add to the texture, I'm using two different mediums. So I'm using the Ranger Distress texture paste, which is the crackle, and sort of spreading that over the flat areas. And then I'm going in with some of the grit paste too, and they're both in the opaque version. I know you can get the grit paste, I'm not sure about the crackle paste in translucent, but I'm using the opaque one. It doesn't really matter in the end because I am going to put a little bit of gesso over the top of this as well, but to get the best effect for the glazes you need to have something white to work on. So I'm just showing you a bit of a close-up of the text that you got there, and you can see me now just going in and trying to fill in most of the sort of crafty brown bits that I've got on the page. I'm using a fairly dry brush with my gesso. It's not very watery, just to sort of go over the top. And instead of using embossing ink, I'm actually going to use the wet gesso to hold the powder down. You can see I'm tipping out quite a bit onto my hands, and I'm just pouring it on. Now, if you haven't used the Distress glazes before, they're embossing powders. They work exactly the same as embossing powders. The only difference is they are translucent. So by layering them over the top like this, they are going to mix together. You are going to see the layers of colours and get some really interesting effects. The other thing is, because they're translucent, you're actually going to see that crackle come through, and you're going to see the texture come through. So for those people thinking, oh, what was the point in putting the crackle paste on? Well, you do actually see it through this embossing glaze because it is translucent, which is really cool as well. Now, obviously, I've only got sort of these grungy, browny, hickory smoke, I think it's hickory smoke, peeled paint, ancient page, frayed burlap, I think are the colours I used on this page. And they sort of come together to make this really cool grunge effect. The heat gunner that I'm using is a very low blow one. It works perfectly fine. It's probably a bit slower than some of the fast ones, but it still heats up really easily. I've been embossing with this gun for 20 years, so it is a warhorse, this one. If you were using a more powerful heat gun, you would possibly have to use, depending on how long it took you to emboss it, you would probably have to use some embossing ink underneath your powders just to hold it on a little bit firmer. But you know, just see how you go. To fill in the gaps and to get rid of the white, I'm now going in with a little bit of copper paint. I have watered it down just to fill in those little gaps, and then I'm just wiping away over the top. The great thing about embossing powder is obviously it's plastic. It is going to resist the paint, but well, it is while it's wet. If you let acrylic paint dry, it will dry on the plastic, but if you wipe it away while it's still damp, it will just fill in the gaps. The other thing that you may have noticed I did is in that center bit where I've just rubbed the ink on, the wax on now, I actually, while it was still molten, just pressed the stamp into the surface, and that's just to give a little bit more texture. In the end, when I finish doing this, you don't actually see that bit because I stick something over the top, but it's a cool effect. Now, with that background, it is so versatile because you can use it in so many different ways. You can cut it up into small pieces. Well, I would cut it into small pieces first and do them on card fronts, which I've done before. You could do it straight into your journal. I just wanted to do it onto cardboard first because I actually wanted to put it onto a burlap page sort of to add to that aged effect. You could do it in the back of a scrapbooking book as well, and it'd be brilliant if you're doing sort of 3D assemblages as a background, because you've just got so much grunge and texture, and it's so easy to do. It really didn't take me that long to achieve that, apart from actually having to let the original pastes dry. So this is a whole heap of stuff, Tim Holtz Ideology bits and pieces that I've just inked up with some walnut stain ink just to age it up, and I'm just gluing them together. So the paper doll that I've got there is actually one of the baseboard dolls, so it's the same as the paper dolls, it's just on a little bit of thicker cardboard, and all I did was sort of add a bit of a halo using some watch parts and some of the plastic wings. I did have this piece of burlap that I was playing around with that I sort of wanted to use, that had those sort of similar colours to the background. So you can see me playing around here with my layout, seeing what I liked and what I didn't like. And this play session is really important. And when you don't have glue on things, you've got time to do that. So you can go around and play around and make sure you're happy with what you've got until you stick it down. So the issue I was having with this was, while I really liked it, I was really frustrated with myself because I actually really liked the background, and I was finding I was hiding a lot of that background. So for me, it was a bit of a balance between what I wanted to show and what I didn't want to show. With the burlap, I thought it was too green, so I tried stamping on black and it didn't stamp very well. I then just stamped with the embossing powder and embossing ink, and then poured some of the hickory smoke embossing powder over it. Now, this didn't particularly work well because I didn't do a great job stamping it. I have actually embossed on the burlap before, and it does look really cool. It does work better though, because the last time I did it, I actually did it through a stencil, so it was a much more defined area rather than a stamped image, which is quite fine. So just play around with it, but it is a really cool effect to actually emboss onto the burlap. It's a great way to get a big chunk of colour, and particularly the Distress Glazes, it works really, really well. So I'd sort of come up with my plan of what I wanted to do. I decided to get rid of the burlap and just go with what I had on the page. I'm using the red liner double-sided tape. The reason for that is it's actually really sticky, and this is because it's so textured. Normal glue is going to struggle a little bit. You could certainly use the Dina Wakley Ultra Thick Gel medium to glue it down, but I just wanted to make sure that everything was glued down fairly quickly, so I didn't want to spend too much time waiting for a gel medium to dry too, because I'd already waited for the paste to dry, so I didn't want to, not waste time, but make more time waiting. So here, that is my final bit all glued down, and there's the page I was going to glue it onto my burlap. But I decided the burlap was too plain, which again, it's me. Why would you do something easy? So I decided to go in with some stencils and just stencil some brown into the background, just around the edges to break it up a little bit. One of the problems I had with this was my book is really bulky. This is one of the last pages in my journal, so I really couldn't get very close into the edge, and the sponge I was using too, I'd actually already used for a different colour and it had dried on it. So again, I've got a bit of a bulky surface on the sponge, and it's not letting me sponge as clearly or as crisply as it usually does. I went in with one of these Tim Holtz stencils as well to just add a little bit more texture. And, while it's not perfect stenciling in the background, it works. It just gave a little bit more interest to that burlap than it had before. So do what you want with that. Some people just like the plain burlap. I just like to decorate it up. Now, I decided to put this in my journal because this, again, I've got about 6 pages left in my journal. This has made my journal incredibly bulky because you can see the depth in the close-ups and the texture that you can get. It would look great. Once I actually stuck it into my journal, I actually thought this would actually look really good in the front cover of my journal. And I actually thought, you could actually just take this petal off and put it into a frame because I really love it. But, you choose. If you do put it in your journal, just be aware it is going to be very, very bulky, but it would make an amazing front cover for a card as well. So always remember that, you know, what you see, when you see someone demonstrate something, think, well, how am I going to apply it to me? Can I do that as a card front? Can I do it on my scrapbooking page? Can I put it in my art journal? And take with it what you want. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you have a go exploring the Distress Glazes. Until next time, bye for now.